The video begins with Russian soldiers advancing through residential sectors, but they are about to be targeted by Ukrainian surveillance drones. Ukraine reacted quickly, sending trained groups consisting of Humvees, Bradleys, Leopards, and other Western APCs and tanks to meet the attack. A Humvee that arrived first immediately received fire from enemy infantry who managed to occupy this building, but that didn't stop it. The vehicle continued moving forward. But in the end, the Russian troops managed to stop the vehicle. Ukrainian troops landed there and immediately rushed to take up safe positions. An enemy drone dropped a grenade and destroyed the armored personnel carrier. Because Ukraine needed help, a Bradley armored vehicle rushed to the rescue. And you should know that inside this building were Russian assault troops. The Bradley crew was unaware of this. The Russian troops fired an ATGM at the rear of the armored vehicle, but missed. Bradley armored vehicles arrived on the scene and cleared the area, providing cover for the Ukrainian armed forces. Once the area is cleared, the Bradley moves on to extract its infantry. They entered the enemy siege in this area. As the Bradley came to a stop, a Russian drone headed towards it but missed. Bradley armored vehicles successfully evacuated the infantry. Russian infantry troops occupied the buildings. At that moment, a Ukrainian Humvee carrying explosives approached the building where the enemy was inside. The vehicle arrived at the building and unloaded its expert troops. They threw the explosives into the basement and returned to the armored vehicle. The Russian commanders watched all this in a state of panic. Meanwhile, the Humvee left the danger zone. Shortly thereafter, the explosives detonated, causing part of the building to collapse. This time, we see Russian forces attempting to launch an attack using light armored vehicles. This represents a transformation into a new form of vehicle used by Russia. This is a classic vehicle, modified by Russia to quickly and easily transport troops over all types of terrain. However, this unique vehicle is not resistant to mines. The front vehicle hit a mine. After one of them was blown up by a mine, the other two vehicles following behind immediately drove past it. You can see a Russian soldier who managed to survive. However, he panicked and ran in an erratic direction. This was the beginning of their failure. As we saw earlier, such a vehicle could carry 5 soldiers, 3 in the back and 2 in the cabin. In addition to mines, Ukrainian drone operators have also prepared various types of drones to deal with this kind of attack. Even though the vehicle was moving fast, the Ukrainian operator, who had above-average skills, easily destroyed it using an FPV drone. One soldier managed to jump from the vehicle and ran in an uncertain direction. The vehicle continued moving, but was out of control. Elsewhere, 2 vehicles carrying Russian infantry attempted an attack. However, they too faced a difficult situation. Ukrainian drone operators are always ready to face such attacks. Not a single corner of the area escapes the operator's monitoring. Within seconds, the operator immediately destroyed the first vehicle. Meanwhile, the second vehicle hit a mine due to its own carelessness. But Ukrainian operators did not let it go that easily. The FPV drone finished off the damaged vehicle. Now you can see for yourself that both vehicles have been destroyed and turned into scrap metal, eaten by fire. You may have always wondered why Russian attacks always end this way. Find out in the next clip. Ukrainian military forces also successfully repelled a Russian attack and destroyed 42 Russian tanks and armored vehicles near a village in the Donetsk region. This decisive action underscored the Ukrainian forces' fierce resistance to the Russian offensive. This defense effort was carried out collaboratively, involving fighters from the 58th Brigade, units of the separate Presidential Brigade, named after Hetman Bohdan Khmelnytsky, the 762nd Special Guard Brigade of the State Transport Service, and other military formations, all jointly fighting the advancing Russian forces. Currently, Russian forces are conducting an aggressive offensive campaign, advancing near Charsiv Yar and Avdiivka. Robotyne is in a precarious situation in the gray zone of the war. However, they are facing fierce resistance from Ukrainian forces, who, despite a lack of ammunition, are inflicting heavy losses on the enemy. To date, Russia has suffered heavy losses on the battlefield, with a total of 11,278 tanks and 23,436 armored vehicles visually confirmed as destroyed. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces also reported that Russia had lost 9,360 soldiers, 227 armored combat vehicles, 371 artillery systems, and 942 drones in a week. Another Ukrainian brigade officer reported that Russian forces lost nearly 3,000 personnel in the Pokrovsk region in 2 weeks. According to Ukrainian data, Russia has lost a total of 1,132,200 soldiers since Russian President Vladimir Putin launched the invasion on the 24th of February 2022. Putin's military has also lost 33,902 artillery pieces during the war. Kyiv's latest figures on Russian losses come as Putin's forces launch a new cross-border offensive into northeastern Ukraine. Military analysts say this new offensive could signal the start of a new major operation by Moscow's military. Russian forces have also launched a new cross-border offensive into northeastern Ukraine, Kyiv announced, possibly marking the start of a major new operation that could endanger the country's second-largest city, Kharkiv. Some media outlets have suggested that the purpose of this offensive is to create a buffer zone along the border to prevent further attacks on Russia by Ukrainian allied forces. The city has been under near constant attack since the start of the full-scale invasion in February 2022 and has suffered significant damage and casualties from Russian missile and drone attacks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a speech that his military would deploy additional troops to Kharkiv. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby acknowledged to reporters on Friday that the offensive along Ukraine's northeastern border could be the beginning of a larger offensive. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry said the attack was repelled, but fighting of varying intensity is still ongoing at several points along the border, with reserve forces deployed. The ministry stated that the attack was preceded by a series of airstrikes and increased artillery fire before the enemy at around 5 a.m. local time attempted to break through our defense lines under the cover of armored vehicles. The effort focused on the area around the border town of Vovchan, located about 48 kilometers northeast of Kharkiv, the ministry said. The evacuation of civilians in the area is underway. Ukraine has been preparing for Russia's expected summer offensive, while also seeking to slow Moscow's advance in the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. Kharkiv, Ukraine's main industrial, cultural, and political center, is considered one of the Kremlin's top strategic objectives. Meanwhile, Ukraine will receive more than 40 M100 and 42 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, known as HIMARS, and ammunition in a new $400 million package delivered by the United States. The U.S. administration has announced a $400 million Presidential Withdrawal Authority, or PDA, military aid package for Ukraine. The PDA allows for expedited delivery of military aid to foreign countries in times of need. Many U.S. weapons are part of the aid package, but the HIMARS and ammunition will be particularly useful. Earlier this week, Germany announced it would purchase 3 new HIMARS from the U.S. Armed Forces for Ukraine, in its fight against a full-scale Russian invasion launched more than 2 years ago in February 2022. The American-made HIMARS proved crucial when they first entered the war in the summer of 2022. The U.S. has supplied at least 39 helicopters to Ukraine since the start of the war. The system can fire 6 rockets that hit targets up to 50 miles away, placing Russian troop concentrations, command posts, and supply centers within its range.